Hey, we are back on the couch today, Jordan and Adrian, and we want to continue our discussion around the subject of pornography. So if you haven't seen part one, be sure to check that out on our YouTube channel. But today what we want to do is talk about something really practical.
Yeah, learning how to slay the dragon of addiction of the pornography in your life.
Yeah, so we want to be really practical about the steps we can take to overcome this addiction, as you say, in our life, the sexual addiction. We want to get rid of it, clean it out so that we can live happy, healthy, relational lives. So stay tuned, we're going to be talking about overcoming pornography addiction today. So, Jordan, the subject of pornography, it is a difficult one. It's one that brings a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. It's one that can destroy relationships.
Yes.
And so really, those are our motivating factors why we want to step out of this way of life, out of this pursuit, because we want to overcome shame, we want to get rid of guilt, we want healthy relationships, we want healthy self-image, and we want a healthy view of sexuality.
Yes.
And in our previous episode on this subject, we actually unpacked a bit of a theology or a philosophy around sexuality. So be sure to check that out. So what would be one of the things you would say if somebody's struggling with this? Where would you start? What would you say we can do to walk this thing back and expel it from our lives?
Right. I think it's first to have a priority and a mindset to understand that pornography, it is wrong.
Oh, because if I don't even know it's wrong to start with, right? Why fight the beast?
Yeah. Why slay this dragon?
Yeah. So starting point. Yep, understand that it is not healthy for you, for your relationships, for the people in your circle. It objectifies, it tends to denigrate, and we see people as a means to an end rather than it being this beautiful experience, sexuality being this beautiful experience of intimacy, vulnerability, and all the rest.
Yes.
Okay, I would also add to that once we have figured out that it's wrong,
yes,
we really are going to need some kind of accountability, right?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, we need to lay this before the Lord.
Okay.
If you're a Christian or a believer in God, then first we need to be opening our hearts to God and confessing this before Him and saying, hey, I need help. Accountability to God first and foremost.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
I like that. So accountability towards God.
Yes.
And then accountability towards other people.
Yes.
And I realize that this is not something you might want to, announce from the rooftops.
Yeah.
But there should be some people that are special in your life that are trusted, wise companions. If you are a gentleman struggling with this, there might be another trusted man friend that you could confide in who would be able to support you. If you are a married person, I think in the interests of honesty and transparency, it might be good to put this before your spouse and have them support you in this. It's going to be a hard conversation, a hard acknowledgement. There's probably going to be a sense of even betrayal and heartache and all the rest of it. But I think it's important that we're not actually keeping secrets from the one we're married to. And if you don't have that privilege in your life because you're not married yet, you're a single person, then certainly that accountability partner that a little bit like when an alcoholic is recovering from their alcohol addiction, there's usually someone they can ring and that they can work alongside with.
So whether you are a male or you are a female, I think it's important that you choose wisely as someone that you can confide in. Probably someone of the same gender could be helpful, or if you're married, your spouse, but to be able to confide with them and say, hey, this is my struggle, I need help, I need your prayers, I need your support and accountability as I'm choosing to fight this battle.
Yeah. And let's go on from there and say another big thing is get rid of all sources in your life. In other words, if you have a magazine pile, burn them, trash them, get rid of them. Do not give them to somebody else.
No.
Right? If you have a DVD collection, scratch them up and trash them before you actually throw them away. Make sure that they're usable. And of course today the challenge is it's very accessible through the internet, and so there may be some things you need to put in place there just to help you in that moment of weakness.
Yep.
Right? Blockers, filters, and all the rest of it that would prevent you. And if you have a spouse, that person could hold the password so you can't get in and access and change those permissions.
Right.
All right? So there's some good things that you can do there by way of a practical. Remember, we don't just want to put it away in a cupboard somewhere, because as we destroy these things, we are making a statement, I am done with this. We don't want to put it away so that one day we can stumble upon it or dig it out again. It's a clean break.
And it's important to understand our triggers. What drives us down those roads of acting out or engaging in pornography?
The thing that sets me off.
Yeah.
Because I could go maybe days or weeks without it.
Yep.
And then suddenly boom, there it is.
Yeah.
Right? So absolutely, I love that idea. So how do we figure that out?
Feelings of loneliness,
Yep.
they can be triggers that hey, I'm alone, so we can justify that this is an acceptable thing to participate in.
Yep, absolutely. Or maybe I am feeling highly stressed and this is my outlet, this is my, you know, we might call it a false refuge. I take refuge there. It's my protection place, my safe place, the place where I forget about the world and its stresses and its disappointments and all the rest of it, right?
Or maybe my partner or my spouse, this could be a reason why we're having a tantrum that I didn't get sex.
Oh, right. So it's something that's owed to me.
Yeah.
It's something that's owed to me, and so if they're not going to give it to me, I'm going to get it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which really, in that case, makes it a lot like adultery, doesn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Choosing to step outside of the marriage bounds to fulfill that pleasure. We don't need that other individual for that.
Yeah, yeah. And we can even be angry with God over something. Like I've read accounts of people who, when they finally analyze their own heart, and that's what we mean by understanding your triggers, is know your own heart, what sets you off inside, right? Some people have even analyzed it down to the place where they realize that as a believer in God, when they felt like God wasn't somehow delivering on what they perceived to be His side of the deal or whatever, that this would be what they turn to, kind of like a sulking child not getting their way with their parent. And so it's important to really understand these dynamics that play out in our lives, because we want to be able to go in right at the root and actually reframe the narrative, tell ourselves a new and more accurate story about God, about His world, about our place in that world, about our connection to other people, our view of human beings around us and the intrinsic value. Because as we begin to reframe that narrative, it erodes away the power of this addiction and the way that it can trigger us. And then you combine that with new and better perspectives on what sexuality is supposed to be, and suddenly that pleasure doesn't seem, you know, so great anymore, because we realize that it's just a fraction of what sexuality is supposed to be, and there's so much more to be gained. It's like the cheap counterfeit. And all of these things begin to destroy the attraction that pornography has in our lives.
Right. You know, pornography could also be used as that little treat, you know, to a sin, to treat yourself. You've been like on a Weight Watch or a diet scheme, and then, this is my cheat day, you know, I deserve because I've been so good.
The reward syndrome. It's owed to me, you know. As you say, we tend to justify it by this being our little congratulation party. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that when you start to put all of these factors together, the accountability, the fact that we live life actually before God, and that there is a strong component of this that is Godward directed, and therefore we need to come before Him. Remember, we actually don't have the power to change our hearts, right?
That's right.
All of these techniques that we're talking about are helpful and they're important, but fundamentally you and I don't change our hearts. We can only surrender our hearts to God and seek His blessing and seek His healing and seek His restoration. In fact, all of these things we're talking about have to be informed by His view and His storytelling of who we are before Him and before others, and our place in the world. So as all of these things begin to act in unison together, what we actually end up finding is that this addiction, like any other addiction, can be broken, can be overcome, will be overcome.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. And you end up with a far more vibrant, a far broader perspective on relationships, a deeper appreciation for the personhood of every individual, and a greater sense of personal dignity, and of course a conscience free of shame and guilt before God. And what a way to live that is. So if we're trapped in this problem of pornography, number one, know that there is hope. And number two, know that there is such a much better way of living and engaging in relationships and even sexuality.
So Adrian, I think it's important to maybe bring this thought into perspective here, is that sometimes we might beat ourselves up if maybe a certain thought has crossed our mind, a temptation, that maybe we equate a temptation to being being involved in that sin.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Jesus said when he was talking about adultery, right? That even to look after a woman, to lust after her, is akin to committing adultery, or is sin like committing adultery. So we could even get that interpretation from Scripture, and therefore, if I've thought it, imagined it, tempted, I might as well go and do it.
Right.
But there is a big difference in terms of consequences and so on when we actually act something out compared to when we entertain it in our minds. Now, to be clear, we want to get rid of that root even in our minds. But
so sin can happen in our mind.
It can, absolutely it can.
But it's what do we choose to act when that thought crosses our mind? Can we dismiss it? Can we choose to think about other things?
Yeah.
Sing Jesus loves me, this I know.
Yeah, and I mean, remember, of course, that we got to point this out as well, that the fact that temptation takes place doesn't mean I have sinned.
Right.
The fact that a glimpse, an imagining, a thought goes through my mind, whether it's on the subject of pornography or anything else for that matter, doesn't mean that I have sinned. It's when I actually welcome it, entertain it, dwell upon it, it becomes larger than life and eventually leads to action. So it's that harboring of the thought. But you know, it's a little bit like the way I see temptation. It's a little bit like, imagine you and I are having a conversation and I say something to you that you are absolutely morally opposed to, right? The fact that I've said it to you has no impact on your guilt.
Right.
You haven't done it. The fact that you heard it isn't wrong. But if you then took that thought and dwelt upon it and entertained it and then eventually acted on it, that process is where sin becomes personally accountable to you, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's important to realize. The fact that the enemy might whisper something in our mind or that we may remember something or whatever the case may be, doesn't mean that we need to sink into the depths of guilt or shame. We need to simply shake that off, hand it over to God immediately and try to, as you say, redirect those thoughts towards something more constructive. I like what I think Martin Luther once said. You can't stop the birds from flying over your head, but you can stop them from nesting in your hair.
That is a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you said it there, be immediately turning it over to the Lord. Is that when we are faced with temptation or possibly have gone the step further and acted out on that temptation, that it's easy to fall into this trap that, oh, I need to have a period of reform and reformation in my life and then I'll come back to God and say, I'm sorry. But we need to be quick to go to our knees and say, hey, I've blown it.
Yes.
Because that is the only place where we're going to find healing and restoration is at the feet of Jesus.
And it's only out of that experience that comes any hope of reform. So it is the lie of the devil to convince us that we must first sort ourselves out before we come to God, or that we must first clean ourselves up because it's so shameful, so yucky, so guilt-ridden for us that He won't accept us in this state. Listen, He's seen it all at the cross. He knows all about it. All He needs you to do is come to Him and hand it over to Him. He specializes in cleaning the dirty.
Yeah, I love this thought that Jesus is not repulsed by our sin in those rights. He's repulsed by sin, but not you, the sin holder, the one that He is not shocked, He's not put off by you, but He welcomes you into His presence. And I just love that thought.
Absolutely. So that is a great way to end on. And you know, if you have some more that you'd like to add to this, because by all means we accept that we are not the final word on this. If you have something else that you can add that maybe you found personally helpful or that you are aware that other people have found helpful, please add it in the comment section below, because we'd like to be able to leave that record there for others who watch this video and who might be struggling. So you can contribute to their overcoming by using that comments section. So thank you for tuning in with us here on the couch again. And we look forward to seeing you again. Hit like, subscribe, share, and do all those cool things, and we will see you again soon.